Hello, podcast listeners. Episode 401. We're going to start with some fan mail. Tucker and I are going to talk nicknames. We got a lot happening in this JJ Meets World. And hey, stick through until the end because I see that some of you stop listening after about 30 minutes and it's starting to piss me off. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called J.J. Meets World.
Tucker, we received a lot of fan mail after our 400th episode. People congratulating us, saying, wow, 400, that's a lot. Some other podcasters. I don't really think it sunk in until I started receiving this mail that I understood how actually huge of a thing it was for us to get to 400 episodes. Now, they're not all good. I'll tell you right now. In fact, I could probably,
and I think I wrote a couple of them too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying the episodes.
Oh.
I'm talking about the episodes. Not all episodes are good. In fact, I remember one from, it's probably like within our first 100 episodes where I won't say expressly who, but it was a former educator who, after about 10 minutes, I was like, there is no meat left on this bone. This person clearly doesn't want to talk about the thing that they came on to promote. And what are we going to do here? So it started my like long-term, I guess, fill of, I'll just ask weird questions, right? I'll be like, listen, would you rather have a horse or 4 ponies? Right? But by the way, what would your answer to that be? A horse or 4 ponies?
I would want a horse.
See, I want 4 ponies because that way, if one dies, I still have 3.
I want one horse, so I'm focusing all of my love and attention on one creature, and she's getting the best. He or she's getting the best, or they. Mm-hmm. I don't know how my horse identifies that they're getting the absolute best treatment possible.
This is why
also,
I don't
I'm eating
think
right now. If you can't tell,
yeah, you would not have been good in the Navy because
I'm always half an hour late.
No, because you'd want to put all your efforts into one thing. You don't want to make them compete for your efforts.
Why does that put me in the Navy?
No, that's why you wouldn't be good in the Navy. You would not be a good naval officer. Okay, let's get to some of these letters that I thought were important that we read. This one comes in, Dear JJ, long-time listener, congrats on the 400th episode. This is a major achievement. I remember the first time I was in a movie that made over $400 million. It was a thrill. Why don't you respond to my Facebook friend invites? What are you afraid of? Signed, Tom H. P.S. You should do an episode about Forrest Gump. I worked really hard on that one. That's a nice little fan letter to get. Yeah, I think that's nice.
They're an actor.
Well, we
working
assume,
on their career.
Yeah. The next one, Mr. Gordon. It has come to our attention that you have created 400 episodes of the internet podcast JJ Meets World. What an achievement. But what if your car's engine were to cease functioning or a catastrophic leak in your transmission? It's time to renew your vehicle's extended warranty. This offer will not last more than 24 hours. What are you afraid of? Sincerely, Tessa B. Pony Rider, Senior Agent. Well, that was a nice thing to receive, and I only have 24 hours from the time I received it, and it's lapsed. I wonder if they'd still let me get an extended warranty on my vehicle.
Yeah, you're always running out.
Yeah. This next one. This one just says, JJ, wow, you did it. 400 episodes, ... And I wasn't invited on a single one. Shame on you. You didn't even respond to my messages about Christmas in July. Stop doing this podcast that drains your bank account and inflates your ego and come see your Aunt Joan. How is Jill? She snubbed me at Costco a few weeks ago. Answer your doorbell when I stop by. What are you afraid of? Love and hugs, your Aunt Joan.
A lot of threatening dynamics you have with our fan base.
Yeah, especially people I'm related to in our fan base. That's
I'm a little
feels
jealous
awkward.
that I don't get any of these.
The next one's
These-
for you.
Oh, someone
Yeah.
sent me one.
Yeah, literally. The
Oh
next
my
one.
God.
It says, Tucker, you're better than this. Don't let the host guy bully you when you talk about your favorite bland foods or weird aquariums. You should have more self-worth. What are you afraid of? Yours, JJ.
I wonder who that was.
Yeah.
That was real sweet.
What a mystery that,
real
that
sweet.
exists out there.
We have a long history of fake fan letters.
Yeah, they're so
think-
good.
I think back to Baggies. Like
When he
leading us
trolled
on,
us for
trolling us
so
for a few
long.
months.
Uh-huh.
And had me like, oh my God, someone's writing to us. This is so cool.
Someone's sending us British money in the mail.
I was legit upset.
And then $2 bills, like,
but it was, it was karma. We've been calling him Baggies for so long. I think that
it was about time that he got back
got
at us.
something back.
I love a good nickname. Now,
And I can back that up. I agree with you because when I was at the lakes 2 weeks ago for 4th of July, my cousin Gina was there and she'd brought her kids and her son's name is Phil and he plays on a baseball team and they've given him the nickname Philly Cheesesteak. And I said, that's awesome. That means they like him. And she's like, yeah, they love him. So yeah, for the most part, if you get a nickname, I think that's awesome. I would love to be like Gandalf. And I'm like, well, I have many names depending on where I'm at. You know, in the South, I am known as Mithrandir, right? And out here, I'm known as, in Vegas, I'm known as Bill Ugis, right?
it is fun because you're not allowed to give yourself a nickname.
Correct.
But I do also like giving other people nicknames. I remember on one epic birthday party, I think it was when my friend Jared turned 18, we decided to it was 2:00 in the morning. And we're like, what should we do? Let's drive down to the casino. And so we drove down to Shooting Star, and on the way, I gave everyone nicknames because I didn't drink at the time. So, I was the DD. And when we got there, Jared was too inebriated to even get out of the car, but that didn't stop.
He couldn't make it to the casino.
Yeah, he literally was just like.
That's on brand.
And then when we got back, we realized like the back door of my car was open. And Jared wasn't there in the back seat. And we were like, oh, God, oh, God, oh, God, what are we going to do? Well, he had made it about 10 steps to like this grassy median and stopped there. And one of his shoes is missing and we never found it.
He just rolled out of the car.
Yeah.
Also on brand.
Yeah, right. But on that, I nicknamed a kid named Zach Bleeker. And that one stuck for a long time.
You named him Bleeker.
Bleeker.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That sounds like a Muppet name.
It does, because it's so close to Beaker.
Yeah.
I was actually named it after Bleecker Street Studios, which is really popular on Adult Swim at that time.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best nicknames I ever received was from a good friend of your dad's. So I've always gone by JJ, right? So I already have a nickname that is my name. I mean, if you yelled my given name out, I wouldn't turn around.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't think you're talking to me.
JJ Gordon.
Yeah, right. So I was with Rob Heinley and your dad, and Rob Heinley goes, JJ, huh? And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, it's my initials. He goes, great. All right, Deuce. And Deuce, I loved it. I felt like I was in a 50s gang. I could do anything.
That's also the name for a shit.
Yeah, right. It's great.
Right.
And so your dad really, really like leaned into it. So your dad still calls me Deuce on a regular basis. And I think that that's awesome because it's such a it's got so many different vibes to it,
It's
right?
nice having multiple names. It really,
Yeah.
really is. I at one point in high school, I was Mother Tucker.
Good one.
At one point in my after high school party days, I was Tucky Goldstein, the Nazi killer. That's got a whole story to it.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Hey, okay. So Tucker itself
Nickname.
is a nickname, but it's a multi-generational piece for you.
Kind of, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a kind of a deep cut story of what one of my former coworkers referred to as Tucker lore. She said, "This is my favorite piece of Tucker lore." My name is William Matthew Lucas. I'm named after my dad, who's William Mallory Lucas, who's named after his dad, William Metcalf Lucas. But when my dad came up to marry my mom, a lot of people, my mom included, and her family called him Kentucky, which they shortened to Tuck. And actually, when I was at the lakes recently, my cousin Gina said, "Oh, say hi to Uncle Tuck for me," because that's what she called him back in the day. And so when I was born, I had the nickname Tucker like immediately. And his nickname didn't stick really because most people still called him Bill, but I got called Tucker like immediately, like day one. And that name just kind of stuck, and it just kind of stuck with me. And at one point when signing me up for school, like somehow my mom got it changed legally to Tucker for a period of time. When I turned 18, I changed it back to William just so it matched my birth certificate. And I was very proud of the connection with my dad and my grandfather. But I love going by Tucker. If someone shouted William, more likely than not, I'm not looking. Right. I'm not turning.
Unless you're at like the Social Security office.
Yeah. The bank and the government are the two people who call me William. Yeah.
Interesting. Have you ever given someone a nickname that you can think about?
I called Dan Tinquist Twinkie in high school.
Did that stick?
That stuck for a period of time. Let me see. There's a lot of like nicknames me and like certain friends have for people in town when we're talking about them.
Oh, sure.
But we haven't given it to them.
Sure. Yeah. There was when my dad passed, a bunch of his fraternity brothers were honorary pallbearers, but they couldn't use some of the names that they called them. Like, for example, he's passed now, so he won't hear this, but one of the kindest, most gentlest, and most amazing people I ever met in my life was Wes Hansen. And I've talked about him on the podcast before, but Wes was known by everyone as Meathead. And they never told Wes that because it's not a kind nickname, but like it's a loving nickname, right? Because not all things that are loving have to be kind. They have to be true. And so they're like, well, we want, because they put like Barry Jeffers in the pallbearers went as Bearcat, and Jim Gunkelman was Gunk. And so they're like, well, what are we going to put for Wes? We can't put Meathead because he was still around. And so they called him like Westminster or something. Like they gave him some just bullshit. And I remember him being like, is that what everyone calls me? and I'm like, yeah, there you go. One of my all-time favorite moments that ever happened at a funeral happened at my dad's wake. We rented this big convention room at the Ramada, and we had it catered. And the idea was like, hey, listen, this isn't a time for tears. It's a time to tell stories and like really, show off who my dad was, right? And so a lot of fraternity brothers came. I heard a lot of stories, stuff that like, thank goodness there are like statute of limitations because there was some wild stuff that they did in college. But I got up and I told a story about how when I was on a cruise ship with my dad over New Year's 2001 to 2002, my cousin had been drinking and walking around and asking everyone what their dream was. And people were like rolling their eyes.
Their life dream?
Yeah.
Not like, what did you dream about last night?
Right. So essentially like, trying to have like a deep conversation, but people were like, listen, I just ate a bunch of crab legs.
We're on a boat.
Yeah, right.
Don't have deep conversations on boats.
It was a giant, it was like my full extended family. So I think there must have been 25 plus of us.
Those are special.
They are fun. They're really fun.
Because they just don't happen.
And what we didn't realize at the time was all of my other cousins were charging their drinks to the rooms, which my grandfather was going to cover. And they didn't realize that he was going to get the bill 2 days later and blow a gasket because they were doing things
they
like
thought they were going to get away with it. Like
I think that they thought it's no big deal. And like one cousin group didn't know that the other cousin group was doing it, which didn't know that the other cousin group. So sure, if only one group was doing it, it doesn't look so bad. And they were doing stuff like, let's buy a round, and stuff like that. Anyway, so.
Hey, Grandpa, your progeny were able to enjoy themselves.
I mean, in all honesty, at one point I was like, listen, I only drank Diet Coke.
Yeah.
And I paid for my own bingo on board. So I think that you guys owe me a part of your inheritance. So my cousin's walking around asking everyone what their dream is. And my dad had a dry sense of humor, and he looked right at her and he goes, I always wanted to be a cowboy. And she's like, really? And he's like, yep, always wanted to be a cowboy. And she's like, why didn't you do it, JD? Why didn't you? He's like, I don't know. I just, I got married and I got kids, and it just never seemed to be something that was in the cards. And she's like, you would have been so great, and I could see you, and like, blah, 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 blah. And like going off on this thing. And everyone is losing their like minds around, because they all know that this is a joke, but he's being so sincere about it that it seems like that's, the truth. And so she walks away, and I can hear her telling someone, like, do you know what JD's dream is?
What's she doing? Go telling people other people's dreams.
And so I remember my aunt's husband at the time turning and talking to my dad, like, do you really want to be a cowboy? And my dad goes, no. So at my dad's wake, I tell that story, and my cousin apparently had put this into her brain as a core memory and had written something about how like JD never got to be a cowboy.
Got to be a cowboy.
And it was it became like a whole thing, and she was mortified, and she left and she cried, and I feel bad about that. But in my defense, I figured she probably would have figured,
Right.
like at one point she would have been like, did my uncle tell me he wanted to be a cowboy? And then to just add an extra little bit of hot fudge on this Sunday.
That's the first, last, and only time anyone's ever using that phrase.
Really? How
Seriously,
about a cherry on the top of this Sunday? Is that better? Is it cherry? So
let's put a little extra hot fudge on the top of this Sunday.
When I turned 21, I put a Facebook post out there about how something happened today. A messenger came, and I turned 21 when I was living in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And I said, a messenger came and dropped off some documents with me at my apartment today. And when my dad was sick, he wanted me to do something that he had never done. And he had purchased this ranch, and it was being run until I turned 21. And now I had a choice to make of if I wanted to go and try and be a ranch hand, or if I wanted to just try it on my own. And so I put on there, and an hour later I look at it, it's got 100 comments on it, and people are like, do it, JJ, your dad would be so proud of you. I was like, uh-oh. So I took it down, but it didn't stop people from asking me about it for the next year. So sometimes the jokes just...
It's always interesting when your personal connection network decides to pay attention to something that you've written, right? Like I did an experiment once a couple of years ago where I wrote some like paragraph joke or something. I don't know. I can't remember what it was, but like I had to put some time into it one day, and I got like 4 likes from people I knew. And then the next day, I'm not even kidding, I wrote the word Pepsi. 22 likes, 20 like comments in the 30s, like people going back and forth about, well, what kind of Pepsi? Well, do you like all the time, like always Pepsi? Why just Pepsi? Do you ever do Diet Pepsi? Why not Diet Coke? Well, only on airplanes.
One of my favorite contests that you ever held on your Facebook was, you said, whichever comment gets the most likes, I will sketch out whatever your comment is. Like I'll turn it into a drawing.
Okay.
And mine was me sad eating an ice cream cone.
That's right.
And
that's
and
right.
you drew it and you sent it to me, and it was great.
Right.
I was very honered. For a while you were making comics like on a regular.
I kind of never really became regular, but I played around with the idea of it. That was one of my dreams as a kid, was to make a living as a writing and drawing comics. I never, ever got even worked towards being good enough to draw superhero comics, but I'd try all the time. At one point I thought, well, maybe I'll get into web comics, because that's early 2000s. That's when that was really starting to blow up, but never stuck with it. I do love doodling, and I could see myself trying to make a comic of something at some point, but I think as like a standalone story. Like I wouldn't be trying to commit myself like I used to do.
Once a week.
Yeah. Oh, this is my new series. This is my new calling in life. Versus, hey, there's a story I want to tell, maybe I can tell it in 10 pages, right?
One of the things I enjoyed was your comics involved like real people. So like,
People that we
I think
knew.
you did a wonderful job. Do you remember you put me in socks and sandals?
Yep.
Like it was great.
Yep.
Excellent choices.
Yeah, I had worked out like how I would draw you for sure.
Mhm.
That was probably the most fun was how can I capture people I know in as few lines as possible?
There was also one where your roommate Shay was a part of it, but she was wearing sunglasses for some reason inside of like a McDonald's. And I remember asking you, and you're like, "Yeah, I messed up on a little bit of the face, and so rather than redo it, I just
Okay.
put sunglasses on her instead."
Yeah. Hey, legit.
Right? Yeah.
a legit
You just
way
got to
to
find
do it.
workarounds,
Yeah,
right?
mostly I would be drawing them about Brad.
Yeah. Oh.
Brad was pretty much the star.
And you really stankified his drawing because Brad, you just accentuated features of Brad that I don't think he necessarily would have like considered like, hey, this is my cartoon persona, but you captured his personality
Yeah,
perfectly in that.
I drew him in such a way that it's like it doesn't look like Brad, but you can tell it's Brad.
Right, exactly. Yes.
you can tell.
Mhm. Those are I love that. Do you ever like just doodle anymore?
Yeah, all the time when I'm just thinking, just-
Anything anything come out of your mind that's pretty good?
Not real. I mean, no. Usually when I'm doodling, it's oftentimes because I just need to focus on like I'm trying to figure out a problem, and so I need to focus like my physical body into doing something. If I'm trying to do, when I doodle to say, break writer's block or something like that, I actually start without even looking at the page while I do it. And I just do a bunch of wild lines. And then once I have a bunch of wild lines, I try to make an image from inside of them somehow, or I'll do things like that. Like, I don't know, like I'll literally start drawing going, I don't know what this is going to be. And I'm already making a line for it. And then I end up connecting the line in some way and a cat happens or whatever. But I would still love to do it. It's one of my hobbies that I have so not paid enough attention to. I should pay more attention to it.
One of the funniest people I know is a guy named Sean, and he I don't think values how funny he is because he's just naturally funny, right?
Mhm.
It's not like me, who I feel like is the Jackie Mason of podcasts, where Sean is just naturally funny. And over the 4th of July, Sean, and I bring this up because Sean is also a talented artist,
Mhm.
right? And I've commissioned a couple things from him. One of the things that I love the most was he went to school for animation, and he worked on a project that was kind of loosely based, I think, off the Gingerbread Man, but it was about a Lutheran pastor like in the 1850s who prays for a family, and God sends him a boy made of ham. And so this ham boy would be shunned by everyone, but like he's got like plastic baggies around his ham feet and his ham hands, but he looks like a ham with a face on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he'd have to sit up in the rafters and listen to his papa preach. And sometimes it would get so hot that his drippings would fall onto the parishioners. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, this is so good. But over the 4th of July, he told a story, and I want to get him on because he needs to tell it about the things you do when you're a kid and the world is full of adventure. And so he talked about how there was this area behind the houses they grew up in that was like, there's like a creek and just a wooded area. And so it became their play place. And he goes, people had thrown garbage back there. So like they had a tire with a rim on it. That is where they would have little fires and stuff like that. And they, someone took a kitchen knife and they used it and they're trying to whittle back there and all this type of stuff. And he tells a story of like finding a beer bottle and peeing in it and then putting it on top of the rim that was over the fire. So it like, and he goes, I didn't know it was going to happen. And it's a whole story of what happens to this ultra heated pee bottle. And I made him tell the story. Not only like there were people our age, but then also like, the next generation up. So like my wife's family was there, and we're sitting around in the living room. And I'm like, Sean, would you tell your pee bottle story? And you could tell he's like, no, don't, no. These are adults. And I'm like, could you just tell it? And so he tells it, and the room is erupting with laughter because it's sort of a boys will be boys, young adventure. And it made me think of the stuff I did. So after I read the book Hatchet, that's all I wanted was a hatchet. I needed it because I was like, any survival time I will ever need, I've got it. And so my mom took me to Menards or to Max Hardware, whatever it was. And I got a hatchet. Now, did you ever read Where the Red Fern Grows?
Yeah, we read that same year, I think, in school.
Do you remember the story of when his hounds tree their first raccoon?
I don't really remember anything.
Oh, God. So he makes a promise to his hounds that if they tree a raccoon, that he'll, he'll do everything he can. Well, they tree a raccoon, but it's in this old oak tree.
He'll do everything he can
because they're
get the raccoon.
Yeah, they're hunting raccoons is what they're doing. So he can sell the pelt.
Got it.
And so he has to chop down this big tree, but it's like huge. And so at one point, like it's like morning, and the hounds still have the tree, the raccoon up the tree, and his dad finds him in the forest, and his hands are all covered in blisters from chopping down the tree. He's like, "But Pa, I promised the dogs." And so then the dad helps like chop it down, and it becomes like a whole thing. And so in my mind, everything was going to be easy to chop down. But it turns out everything's like a red fern. Have you ever tried to cut down a tree with an axe?
No.
It's impossible.
It takes a long time.
Yeah. Like, I'm surprised that our forefathers and foremothers were able to settle anything because that is total and complete crap.
Right.
So
do you think they ever learned a method of like holding onto a beaver and then having the beaver like do it?
I think
like that'd be like a Flintstones version of like a power tool.
I wonder about this. I wonder if you could like if you could build like a playpen around the tree and then fill it with beavers so that they've got no choice but to.
Yeah. And the playpen has to be made of something that beavers can't chew through.
Yeah.
And can beavers climb? Are they climbers?
I don't think so. I think they're swimmers.
And they're definitely swimmers.
This is another thing I talked about at the lake. When I was a kid, one of my cousins told me that you should never go skinny dipping in a lake because a beaver will bite off your tallywhacker.
I'd be more worried about a snapping turtle.
See, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, like, I don't like that idea. And has that ever happened? Probably not.
I've never even desired to do that, so I don't need to be warned away from it.
Let me Google real quick.
Skinny dipping with my wiener out.
Why? Well, what you go skinny dipping, but you're always cupping?
Mm-hmm. I'm always tucking it back.
You're straight cupping?
Cannonball.
Okay. Has a beaver ever bit off a human head, a finger, a bear, a cat? There's a lot of these.
You could maybe just generalize what kinds of animals have bitten off wieners?
So this led me to a Wired article from 2014, posted at 6:30 in the morning in the science section. Matt Simon wrote it. The title is "Fantastically Wrong: Why People Used to Think Beavers Bit Off Their Own Testicles." Ah, the thrill of the hunt, the trusty hounds at your side, howling and panting and dragging you toward a quarry. A lumbering beaver not accustomed to moving on land. You close in, you raise your spear. The beaver suddenly stops, looks over its shoulder at you and lifts a back leg. It bares its teeth, stares you right in the eye and proceeds to chew off its own testicles. Then it throws them at you. What kind of drugs was, like, he's saying that this was like, perhaps a bit taken aback by this gesture, you let it scurry away sans gonads because a medieval hunter like you is only after the precious oil known as castoreum, those organs bear. The beaver has quite cleverly just saved its own life, or at least according to a number of medieval bestiaries, often gorgeously illustrated tomes that catalog nature's critters, the real, the totally imagined, or the slightly embellished. Interestingly, bestiaries noted that when pursued, the wolf similarly chews off a tuft of his own hair on its back that humans covet as an aphrodisiac. Oh, so this is all about how, like, we used the things we are wrong about.
Oh, okay. And how often animals would have to mutilate themselves so that we would leave them alone.
Which makes sense because at one point we found traps and things like that would have had like something that gnawed its own leg off.
But how would a beaver know? Like, you want these?
That's a good question.
Oh, let me just. You should have said something. I'll give it to you.
I assume that a beaver knows the most worthy part of its own body. And the beaver's be like, you fools! It's the tail that has the power.
I was assume it was the teeth because it's the most destructive. You could slowly take out the underside of your home if your house is on stilts.
Yeah, and if I had enough buddies of mine, and here's the thing that's ironic. They would take out those stilts and build their own home out of the stilts. Beavers have two sets of eyelids. One that's clear, that when they're swimming underwater, they can close and look through so that they can see obstructions. And then another one that's regular eyelids, so that when they're like, it's time for me to go to sleep, or when they get home to their beaver dam and it's time to kiss their beaver spouse.
One blocks water, the other blocks light.
Yeah.
They're also really powerful with their teeth because that's how they
reproduce.
Change the course of rivers.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
They change the course of how a river runs.
So I've always wondered, are beavers' teeth, do they grow fast? Like those front teeth, do they grow fast? Because
that's my limited understanding.
When you're constantly gnawing, you're most likely working away that teeth. So are they constantly growing? So if a beaver was be like, you guys just sucks, I'm only going to eat burgers from now on, their front teeth would just get enormous because
I believe so.
Yeah.
So they have to. They need. So what happens if we're out of trees? All the beavers are gonna fucking have too long of teeth.
Did you ever see the show Zoobilee Zoo when you were younger?
A little bit, yeah.
So I loved Zoobilee Zoo, and one of my favorite characters was I'm Bill the Beaver. Bill the Beaver. I'm Bill the Beaver, and
Build a beaver.
Bill the Beaver. So it sounds like Builder Beaver.
Build the beaver.
Yeah. And he was an inventor and a craftsman. And he was great. I also had they had a kangaroo named What's It that I had a huge crush. Even right now, I'm like, oh, if only I could find one of those costumes.
So her versus Gadget, which anthropomorphic cartoon female are you going for?
What size am I? Because
you would
kangaroo named What's It.
You would be whatever size you needed to be proportional to have sex with that particular one.
So we're going straight to being intimate with it?
Let's stop pretending like that wasn't already in the context of this.
I think it's Gadget.
Gadget.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
Because I'd be like Monterey Jack and be like, Gadget love. Yeah, in fact, we're at a wonderful time now.
What it'd be for me?
What?
It'd be Little Mermaid when she's a human, because I'm not a fucking weirdo.
Oh, you want someone who's silent? You like your women silent and unable to speak?
When she's human and fully healed at the end, she has her voice.
Fully healed?
Yeah. Everything.
Are you saying that mer person is less than?
Yes,
they need to be healed?
Yeah, they're half fish, and I kill fish. I eat them all the time.
I can't believe I'm about to tell this. So when we'd go on Linebenders road trips, one of the things that we would do is there was this just bizarre site where people wrote erotic fan fiction about things. And we read this essentially it'd probably be like Britta in the backseat and she'd be reading it, but it was a story about the Little Mermaid's first, her marriage night and how confused she was at what was happening. And I remember we got to the hotel 3/4 of the way through the story, and we a kid named Joe who's in it was like, well, are we gonna just meet up in someone's room and finish this thing or what? And the answer is yes. Yes, we did as a group, and it was weird. And we read that one several times because she assumed that humans mated the same way as fish with she would lay the eggs and then the man would fertilize the eggs, the male fish.
She's not a live bearer.
No, she didn't know. She didn't know what that was. She thought that he was hurting her. And it was they get married on a ship, and so it's about it's bizarre. It's weird. Okay, so I'm going on a vacation by myself coming up here pretty quick.
Okay.
My wife has been on several vacations. I haven't been anywhere since New York. Even when I went to Denver, it wasn't to go on a vacation. I went and helped people move into their new house. And so I told Jill, I was like, I need a vacation that's something I want to do. And I need you not to go on it because I want to do exactly what I want to do. I want to eat when I want to eat.
Yep.
I want to, do what I want to do. And I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to go to Atlanta.
Really?
Yeah. For two things. I've always wanted to tour the Pepsi or the Coca-Cola factory, excuse me. I'm told that tour is fun. It's a fun factory tour. Okay. But then that's also the home for the Center for Puppetry Arts.
Ooh.
And so they have a whole wing that's dedicated to Jim Henson, and I've seen people post pictures about it lately, and I've been kind of dying to go. Now, my other option is in the beginning of August to go to Los Angeles and see Puppet Up, which is the Henson Company does an improv show with puppets.
Ooh.
And so what they do is they have a camera that's mounted that's probably 7 feet off the ground. And so they hold the puppets up so they're in frame, and then they've got monitors that they can see. Okay. So you can watch them.
Okay.
You can watch the people work the puppets and stuff, but you can also watch the screen and just see just the puppet magic.
Okay, cool.
And what's interesting is this was the first thing that they did with Ha, which was Henson Alternative. So they're kind of dirty.
Okay.
And I remember one, because TBS aired two of them, two of these puppet ups, and done in a huge, in front of, at the Aspen Comedy Festival. And one of them was so damn funny. It was Brian Henson and another guy doing it. And there are these two old guys, these two old puppet characters. And they're like, well, officer, it happened like this. We were walking through Central Park at 3 a.m. And then Brian Henson goes, and touching ourselves. He goes, yes, a little bit. And he goes, and then we went into the bathroom because we needed to whittle. And when we went in there, we saw that there was someone in the handicap stall, and we got down and we saw two regular legs. And they both have this, make the shocked thing. Can you believe it? And so we knocked on the door. We said, hey, are you a handicap? And so then Brian Henson's character goes, and then I listened real close. I heard, you got to have a faith. You got to have faith. And I was like, George Michael. And the sketch ends with the older one going I said, so come on out here and we'll break your legs. And it was and some of them are really filthy, but it's this to show that you can enjoy puppets and not have to be, young, and not that they have to be crass to be adult, but just, I think that's it. That's the barrier, right?
So you want to take a vacation,
Muppet
you want to go see where they make Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
And then you want to watch a dirty puppet show.
Yeah. But I'd have to go to two different places because Puppet Up is in LA.
Oh.
And here's the thing. So Jim Henson bought Charlie Chaplin's studio in LA. So that's where the Henson Creature Shop is. Yeah.
That's really cool.
And they announced last month that they're selling it.
Are you going to buy it?
I don't think I can afford it, but it's beautiful. It's all brick. It's old. It's gorgeous. They actually feature it in The Muppets, the movie that came out in 2012, because they toured the Muppet Studios and they're walking through the actual one. And they said, listen, it just makes sense for us to move somewhere that's a little more industrial. And
it sounds like that's a historical landmark.
It is. And on the front, they have a giant Kermit that's on top of the gate that's dressed as the Tramp.
Ah, nice.
And so whoever buys it, well, it went from Charlie Chaplin to Jim Henson.
Right.
This is a huge thing.
So then who do you think living today would be to carry on the legacy of artist to artist? Who would you like to see buy that? If you heard tomorrow, oh, this is the person who bought that and they're going to be using it now, who would make you happy to hear that?
Miller and Lord. So the guys who did
Little Brit. Is that Little Brit?
No. They're the guys who did 21 Jump Street, and then they're the ones who did the Lego Spider-Man, the Lego movie, the animated Spider-Man. They're the ones who are making Solo, and then Disney was like, nope, we're going to take this away from you, and gave it to Ron Howard. Those guys are awesome. And I think that what they love the most is being loving to something, but also like allowing it to have a modern bend. Like I watch the Lego movie and I am inspired to create. Like that whole movie is so genius and so well done in so many ways. Those Spider-Verse movies are killer. They're so good. So yeah, I'd want to see that. Also, I found this out over the weekend. So Shelley Duvall just died.
Yep. R.I.P.
Who had a really tough end of her life.
Yeah, she did.
And so, which is amazing because she was one of the biggest stars of the 1970s and early 80s, like one of the biggest. In fact, she had a huge influence on my life because she made a show, I think, for HBO called Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater. Did you ever watch any of those?
Every once in a while, I find a VHS tape of it out and about.
And they're amazing. I think it was Robin Williams' first television appearance. He plays the Frog in the Frog Prince. Jafar is played by, in the Aladdin one, it's played by oh God, why can't oh my God, in Star Trek. Not William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy. It's played by Leonard Nimoy, and he is doing a big overacting thing. And they're so cheaply made, but lovingly made. Like you can tell, like it's a really talented group of people who used like $20 to build the Three Bears house. And so I'm just amazed by that. But so Shelley Duvall passed, and it brought up something I've never seen, which is a scene that was at the end of The Shining. That after it had been released for a week, Stanley Kubrick pulled the prints and like sent out new ones that had this scene edited out of it. And so the scene is in a hospital and it's Shelley Duvall and her son, Danny, and they're being interviewed about what happened by the manager of the hotel that you see at the very beginning interviewing Jack Nicholson. And it's supposed to give you this feeling that he says like, well, no one has found the body of your husband. And then it's supposed to bring around this thing of like, this guy knew, and maybe he had been like courting, you know, like he feeds the like energy of the hotel. And people said like, it leaves it to be too ambiguous in a way by saying like, oh, we didn't find your husband's body, versus that stark shot of him being frozen at the very end. And Shelley Duvall was really angry that they cut this out because she thought like this is the thing that makes her character not just a victim, but like you understand how strong she had to be to actually survive through this. I was like, that's interesting.
Crazy. She was the absolute perfect casting choice for olive oil.
So good.
Like there will never be a better olive oil.
I wonder if people have looked at Popeye with a new vision, because really I think when it came out, it was, I mean, critics were not too happy with it. Audiences certainly didn't go out in droves. You know, Robert Altman was very sad with the way that this thing was received, but I watched it not too long ago, kind of recently. And I think that it really is. It's a great comic book adaptation. It's got, you know, the costuming is perfect. The set that they built on the side of that was in Malta, and those sets still exist, and they're a tourist destination.
It makes me think of like classic Hollywood style filmmaking, though, too.
Yes,
where everything's kind of shot like a play. Almost,
yes,
right. Where you're kind of always sort of off to the side and seeing like a wide image of stuff. But that you're just immaculately well designed and very true to the source material. I really like the movie. I have it on VHS. It is on my shelf of comic book character movies.
Yeah, it's a good move. But yeah, Shelley Duvall did great stuff.
Yeah,
great stuff. She also was kind of annoying in some stuff. Like she played like an annoying person really, really well. And I think one of the last things I remember seeing her in was Casper. Was she? Yeah, she was in like one of the Casper spin-off movies, Casper Meets Wendy.
Really?
Yeah, where it's Casper at like a resort and then Wendy at a resort. And it was like a maid, and Hillary Duff plays
Yeah,
Wendy.
right.
And it's Wendy, you know, who.
Yeah.
What was the company that made those comics?
Oh, I'm trying to remember now.
Because they only knew how to draw one body.
Yeah,
and
it
so
was
like
always
Casper's
that sort of
body.
that cherubic, like they did Richie Rich.
Yeah.
and all these. Was it Charlton comics? Maybe.
And like, there's also a little girl, like little Lulu, and it looked the same except for it
Yeah.
had black hair.
Yeah, yeah. Wendy was a witch. There was Richie Rich. There was Casper, the friendly ghost. Yeah.
Do you know that it's the 30th anniversary of Richie Rich?
No shit.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved that movie.
I think that movie represented so much to our generation of like what we thought success looked like.
You could have your own McDonald's in your house.
That's exactly the thing. Yeah. And you wanted like a science, like I love the fact that the R&D for Mr. Rich's company was in the basement of his own house.
Yeah. I remember being obsessed with the robot bee hornet
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
too, and thinking these effects are amazing.
I quote this all the time when I'm just by myself. Dad not found. Dad not found. Dad not found.
I always quote oh, thank goodness my teeth were starting to grow fur.
Everything's slicker than snot on a doorknob. I heard it in prison. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that went into making that movie amazing. And do you remember like what the whole point of like Richie Rich and his friends were? Is that the guy John Larroquette, who is probably at the height of his fame,
He's trying to steal the company, right?
he wants not only to steal the company, but he also wants everything that's in their rich family vault.
Okay.
And
Okay.
And then he closes down like the paint factory that all these kids' parents work at in a New York suburb. And
Well, is it they eventually go in the vault and it's just like baby clothes?
yeah,
and
it's
stuff?
family memories.
It's not. It's
the
not.
bowling trophy.
Yeah.
You find out that they're regular people who just happen to have a ton of money.
Happen to have billions of dollars.
Yeah, huh?
Yeah.
And that laser that they use to create the Mount Rich. And I remember John Larroquette goes, "Your vault is an entire mountain. You really are filthy rich, aren't you?" And then they go and they get it. And then all of them come out of like the nose, and so they look like boogers crawling out of the nose on it.
I need to rewatch this now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've given you a good assignment then. Macaulay Culkin's 1994 classic, turning 30 years old. And hold on, wait. There's one more we got another piece of mail that just has come in right now. Hold on, let me take a quick look at this. This it's from Apple iTunes. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, Apple iTunes says your bill is delinquent and we're going to repossess JJ Meets World, and it will now be Apple Computers Meets World. And from now on, you will refer to yourself as a Mac 12, and Tucker will be referred to as a Lisa. Signed, the frozen corpse of Steve Jobs. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. Snakes in a toilet, hobos with only one eye, and girls.